Well, greetings and salutations and happy birthday to the Newsman Weekly podcast. We launched this audio-visual madness 1 year ago, and we're still going strong.
Happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday to us. Cheers. Maybe we're not strong, but you know what? We're still here. Folks, this show is kind of like the old explorer Christopher Columbus. When we started, we didn't know where we were going. When we got here, we didn't know where we were. And when we finished that first show, we didn't know what we'd done. And we did it all with somebody else's money, thanks to our employers here at Source Media.
What an analogy.
Thank you very much. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today, just as you have faithfully done every week since we launched this show on June 25th, 2024. My God, that seems like a year ago. Feel free to say something. Jesus.
It is almost a year ago.
You know, how did we survive a year with this kind of participation? You know, there are a ton of places you can go every day for news, information, and entertainment. Maybe not entertainment, but at least we're trying. We're grateful so many of you come to us every week. We also know we couldn't have done this without your support, so please, if you haven't done it already, please subscribe to this show and give it a great rating, and please don't let how this show goes today influence that great rating that you plan to give us. Many thanks to local country singer Luke Watson for writing and singing Smoke and Drink, a song that quickly became this show's theme song, and the way we've started today, we may finish this show by doing just that. My thanks also to the great folks at Relax It's Just Coffee for sponsoring this show and for being a great partner to the Newsman Weekly. Every day just starts better with great coffee, and our friend Paul Kimmerling and his baristas at Relax simply have the best in town at 105 North Main Street in downtown Mansfield. As you might suspect, based upon the relative radio silence you've heard thus far, I am joined again today by Zach Heiser, the executive producer of the Newsman Weekly, and Hayden Gray, the show's official videographer. We post audio of this show every week, but you can also watch it on the Richland Source YouTube page. So if you want to see behind the scenes of this multimedia madness, check it out there. Good morning, gentlemen. How the hell are you?
Morning.
Morning.
Again, just scintillating contributions.
Interrupting at the wrong time. Sorry.
Yeah.
That, you know, both of you coming in on the show's birthday, actively participating in defense of my ability to do this show was not something I anticipated today.
I wanted to honor Grant Ritchie today, who was with us for the first, 47 episodes, 48, 49.
So you came in not only not hot, but awkward.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, you've succeeded. No.
Thank you.
Hey, it was a hell of a newsy weekend, both home and abroad. How are we feeling today, folks?
A little sunburned. I was outside a lot of the weekend, hit the pool, hit Cedar Point. And, we've gone from 3 months of rain straight into the ass crack of summer.
Straight into hell.
Just lovely.
Hayden?
Yeah, I mean,
feel free to jump in anytime.
I'll get in.
Don't sit around and wait for orders from headquarters. Mount up and ride to the sound of the guns. Pat Buchanan said that after the New Hampshire primary many years ago.
It's not as visible as Zach's, but I had a little time in the sun, too. I did some yard work Saturday and Sunday. Went to a car show Saturday. Not for very long, but...
Yeah. I was in Shelby. I think I saw your wonderful images. Yeah.
It was, yeah. It was pretty cool.
And that's a hot weekend for car show. That's because it's even hotter around all the
you want to know how
rubber
hot,
and asphalt.
You want to know how hot it was?
How?
I saw a dog chasing a cat, and they were both walking. That's damn hot.
That makes sense, yeah.
No, I did a little bit of helping my son move from one place to another over the weekend. It was kind of hot to do that.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Sunday, June 22nd, 2025, was the 40th anniversary of my marriage to the former Marcy Dibbling.
Wow.
And I
40 years.
40 years.
Decades.
What's she thinking?
She's thinking, she's waiting, wondering why this marriage license hasn't expired yet.
At this point, it's be more hassle than not.
In a government contract, and what are you going to do?
It just never ends, you know.
Yeah.
But no, and we celebrated by me working.
Of course.
Hayden, can you, on the YouTube, can you please throw up Hunnell and Marcy's wedding photo?
I can.
That he posted in Slack over the weekend. I think that'd be a nice touch.
It'd be a tribute.
Well,
Look how young.
Yeah, very
Wow.
young, very young. I was 25.
Whoa.
She was 22.
Ooh.
Well, I mean,
So,
that's fitting that you said you were working, because I know you said, from the beginning you've always been like, this job, it's going to take me away some nights quite a bit. And
Yeah, and you know what? 40 years later, it's still doing that.
it is.
I covered a celebration or memorial type event at the Jericho Wall of Remembrance and Recovery last night. Boy, it was hot out there.
Oof. Yeah, I'm sure
But,
that's no shade out there.
They were putting stars up to commemorate or mark the lives of 399 people in Richland County who have lost their lives to drug addiction since 2016. So that's what I did. That's what I did Sunday. Celebrate the anniversary. But we're hoping to do something this weekend coming up. We're not sure what yet, but we'll see how that goes. Hey, folks, we got another great show for you today. In fact, we have a second birthday to celebrate. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by Source Media CEO Jay Allred. Richland Source celebrates its 12th year of existence in June. We thought it would be a great time to have the big boss make his first appearance on the Newsman Weekly to talk about the founding of the company, how we got to where we are, and maybe give a little bit of a sneak peek at what's coming next. Also joining us later today will be Dave Kracker, a Mansfield resident who recently took a deep dive into how local governments spent American Rescue Plan Act funds. Dave was a college accounting major and is now the retired executive director of Richland County Children Services. He sent out several pages of reports recently on what he found doing his ARPA deep dive. We've done a lot of reporting on ARPA spending ourselves over the last few years, so none of what he reported came as a big surprise to me, but we'll talk about it. And I'm more interested in why he decided to take a closer look at it.
Is that Richland County funds that he looked at, or just Mansfield, or what?
City of Mansfield, Richland County, and did what he could to find out what other municipalities, villages, and townships who also got money as well. So we'll talk to him about that. So stay tuned for both of those interviews. Before then, we got some news for you. Unless you've been asleep all weekend, you know by now that the United States military, under the orders of President Trump, bombed 3 nuclear enrichment sites in Iran over the weekend. Dubbed Operation Midnight Hammer, it marked the first time the United States has actually used its massive 15-ton bunker buster bombs in combat. They were dropped by B-2 Spirit stealth bombers from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. The attacks on the 3 sites occurred between 6:40 and 7:05 Eastern Time, that's p.m., Saturday, in the middle of the night in Iran. Planes dropped 14 of the bunker buster bombs on the sites, according to the Trump administration. The attack also included 40 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched by U.S. Navy submarines more than 400 miles away. Pentagon officials said Sunday morning that all of the U.S. aircraft involved in the attack left Iranian airspace without incident. In case you're wondering, in the case of the B-2 bomber, it was a 37-hour round trip from Whiteman Air Force Base to the targets in Iran and then back home again. Iranian officials denounced the attack and said retaliation will be forthcoming against the United States. Not sure where this is all going, but here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of scary times. I've got a couple thoughts, and this is just my perspective, but I feel like it's interesting because it's not really what MAGA campaigned on. In fact, I heard a lot of the opposite, that if Democrats be elected, we'll be closer to World War III. So that's interesting. I feel like American leadership's definitely controlled and influenced more than ever by Netanyahu. And then, my last thought is, I know, and we were talking about this before, but I know this isn't just exclusively a Trump thing, but it'd be nice if, when we're spending billions of dollars a day overseas, if we just could have it maybe a debate, or maybe go to Congress with and talk about it amongst the representatives of the people. That's all. I don't know. I hope it's, like you said, the Pentagon said we made the round trip. We're in and out. Hopefully it doesn't turn into an Iraq 10-decade-long disaster or an Afghanistan 20-year-long disaster. But we will see, like you said.
Yeah, I think there's as you mentioned, seeing, I think on both sides of the aisle there are kind of conflicting thoughts or opinions on what was carried out, how it was carried out, whether it should have been at all or not. I think there's probably all things that all of us could agree on, disagree on. So, it'll be interesting to see, because like we talked about as well, what retaliation looks like. I guess we don't really know. It could take the shape of many different things. Obviously we do have a lot of troops over in that region, but I've heard things also saying it could be things like cybersecurity or cyber attacks, things that aren't traditional
warfare. Yeah.
So, Carl, certainly not anything that has been traditional in your lifetime.
No, nothing's traditional. I mean, I'm old enough to remember, go back to 1979 when the Shah of Iran fell. The students seized the American embassy, took 44 American residents hostage, and for the last 46 years, what is 79 to 25? Somebody give me do the math.
What? 46 years.
Yeah,
I think you got it.
Okay. I mean, this is a country that has chanted death to America and referred to America as the Great Satan ever since that regime fell and the current regime took office. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but I will say, as someone who grew up with my dad in the Navy and then served time in the Navy Reserve and the Air National Guard, the United States has the only military in the world that could do what it did over the weekend, flying B-2 bombers 18 hours each way, flying into Iranian airspace undetected, joined by probably F-22s and other military aircraft to make sure they clear the way and that there was no response, drop the bombs and then get back home, and also at the same time it with the firing of Tomahawk cruise missiles from a submarine that's sitting 400 miles away, to do it surgically and get home. I'm not going to talk about the politics of it because that's way above my pay grade, but I'm just going to say I'm proud of the United States military this morning. They did what their commander-in-chief told them to do.
Sure, yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, do those B-2s have to refuel?
Yes.
How often?
They have to refuel. They would have had to refuel several times along the way. Interesting thing was there was a flight of B-2s that took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri that on Saturday very publicly kind of headed west. And, of course, the Internet was buzzing all day that the U.S. is flying B-2s maybe to Diego Garcia, maybe Guam, and that this would be, once they get there, then they're being positioned to help Trump make his decision, whatever he needs to do. What they didn't know was, unbeknownst to anybody except the military, there was another flight of B-2s that left Whiteman that headed east. And they were actually the ones that got over target on Saturday night and actually did the bombing. So while it was almost while the world was looking at the U.S. military's left hand, it was the right hand that actually came across. So sometimes you use that information. I remember going all the way back to our initial assault into the Middle East when we started landing planes, cargo planes and things like that, bringing in troops back in, I'm going to be bad about the year here, but they used, there was not very much U.S. military on the ground, but they used CNN and other media to make the enemies at the time think there were, because they kept seeing planes and planes and planes and planes landing, and the media kept reporting on it.
Right.
So you had this idea that there was this massive buildup almost overnight, when actually it took much longer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see where it all goes. I have no idea, but I wanted to talk about that a little bit this morning. Hey, locally, we have a new Miss Ohio.
I love the transition from a war to Miss Ohio.
The Middle East to Miss Ohio.
That's the range we cover on the Newsman Weekly.
When you come on the Newsman Weekly, you got no idea what we're going to talk about, because quite frankly, neither do we.
Yeah, so what happened in Miss Ohio this weekend, for those that weren't tuned in?
Yep. She was crowned in Mansfield Saturday night at the Renaissance Theater. 24-year-old Olivia Fawson, a native of Kitts Hill, for those who wonder, population 2,943 in southern Ohio. She earned the title and will represent the state in the Miss America competition later this year. A musical theater graduate from Oklahoma State University, she's currently working on her law degree from the Ohio State University. More locally, Miss Ashland Grace Bryant ended her first Miss Ohio competition as fourth runner-up among the 28 women vying for the title. Hayden, I think you covered one night of this competition. Give us a full report.
Yeah, I was there Friday, and it was funny, though, because coincidentally, the night that I covered last year, Olivia Fawson won the talent award, and then she also won the talent award the night I was there this year, and then obviously won the whole competition this year. So, yeah, it's always entertaining. Last year was the first time I ever went to it, and I had no idea what to expect, and they honestly do a really good job. Like, it's not like going to, I don't know what maybe I was expecting, like kind of a dainty, quiet pageant or something. Like when I got there last year, like
you can't use the word pageant. They did away with that.
Right.
It's the Miss Ohio Scholarship program.
I'm just saying, like, I didn't expect there to be like full on hype video and like insane lighting before this thing starts. And honestly, a sold out Ren, the people that are there are not just Miss Ohio's in town tonight, let's go check it out. No, these people are like diehards. Like,
yeah, they come from everywhere.
They know somebody or have
the Ren was packed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know. It's a cool environment, and it's another nice opportunity to practice some photography. So yeah, it was fun. But
shout out to small town Ohio too. Kitts Hill.
I had a hard time finding that on the map when I wanted to research what the population was.
Yeah. She
it is an unincorporated entity.
On Friday night, she said she wasn't sure if there was a stoplight in town. She asked her mom when we were doing the interview, and they weren't sure there was a stoplight. But her family has a Christmas tree farm down there.
Well, there you go. Southern Ohio shines once again. Hey, the future, speaking of properties and things like that, I think property would be in Kitts Hill. But the future of the property that was once home to the O.C. Hill Neighborhood Center is still up in the air. A Wisconsin-based company wants to buy the now vacant land from the Richland County Land Bank, and they want to build an affordable housing complex for senior citizens. During a public meeting on the proposal Wednesday at the North End Community Improvement Collaborative, a room full of residents expressed their opinions, many of which were not enthralled with the idea, nor were they happy about the timing. A company representative said that the company needs to apply for state financing, which would make the development possible, and they have to do that by August 14th. That means the land bank would need to sell it to the company in the next few weeks. One woman said, quote, "This feels rushed, and we are not on your timeline." The land bank will be meeting soon to make a final decision on the proposal. I think the gentleman from the company has an idea about what they want to do, but I don't think until people started talking, he had any idea what the O.C. Hill Neighborhood Center and all of the things it offered over the last century means to the people of the north end of Mansfield.
Right.
This is something when it closed during COVID and never reopened. At the time, Mayor Tim Thaker said that, we're going to put, and they decided to basically give it to the land bank, which did what they do, and they had demolished it because the building was not salvageable unless you wanted to spend millions of dollars. Thaker and his administration promised that they would put something in its place. And guess what? Nothing has ever been put in its place.
And his administration is no longer.
Right. He left office in 2024. It's now a very valuable piece of vacant land. And I'm not shocked at all that the people in the North End are a little suspicious, rightfully so, when people get in front of them and make promises about things. Especially, there was a lot of discussion about we need things for young people. Senior housing is needed, but so were things for young people because the O.C. Hill Neighborhood Center was a magnet for young people in the community. It had a gymnasium that people throughout Richland County probably came there and played basketball when they were growing up. It was home to a lot of social service agencies, all of which had to find new homes when the city closed the place. So, yeah, I'll be curious to see how it pans out. But one woman said during the discussion this seems like a done deal. And Mansfield Mayor Jody Perry, who's a member of the Land Bank Board, assured her that it's not a done deal. And we'll see how it plays out from there.
Are there any other proposals like in the mix, or is it just this Wisconsin-based company that is kind of top of the list, or have we heard of anything else that?
This is the only one that's on the table right now,
Okay.
and it just sprang up recently at a land bank meeting. Board Chair Bart Hamilton and Executive Director Amy Hamrick kind of broke the news about this development. And, I mean, this company, it's called Volker, based out of Wisconsin, and the gentleman who came to the meeting is from Cleveland. They have a great track record for doing just this kind of stuff.
Sure.
It's just the timing of it. It seems rushed to the folks who live in the North End and who care about that property. And who knows, I just think there's an awful lot of concern when public officials start telling people in the North End, hey, you kind of trust us.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, because obviously you were there, and I don't want to misquote our mayor, but I believe she had said at one point, whether it was at a land bank meeting or at that public meeting, that something just feels, I don't know if she said like off, but had mentioned the fact that it's kind of hard to come in and try to tell a community that you don't know and haven't really seemed to make an effort yet to know what you would like to do. And
yeah, one of the things Jody said at the land bank meeting that Katie Ellington Sorrell covered is, look, when it comes to Westinghouse, when it comes to the former YMCA, we've done requests for proposals. Why aren't we doing that here? Yeah. And, Bart Hamilton saying, look, opportunities like this with state funding don't come along all that often, and we really need to seize on this. And Bart also pointed out correctly that when the land bank did a survey through NECIC a couple of years ago, that senior affordable housing topped the list of what people said they wanted to see there.
Okay.
So Bart's like,
that was valid.
So Bart's like, this is what you said you wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of it's just the timing. People are just, we're not on your timeline, you're on ours.
Right.
And they're not thrilled at this
And like
point.
you said, the trust factor, there's so much history there.
Right.
It's maybe a little bit tough of a pill to swallow just to see senior housing come in, even if it is something that some of the community wants, but not all of it. And like you said, timing. So
I think the good thing is that at least these public meetings are happening because, like you said, things like proposals coming in, or maybe that survey should have been updated if that was a few years ago where they were saying they wanted senior housing. But at least thank goodness the public is having opportunities to come and that officials in our area are willing to listen to them.
Yep, and there was a room full of people. I was happy to see that. Hey, finally, Mansfield Mayor Jody Perry didn't mince words last week when she was talking to state lawmakers about Ohio House Bill 335. She used words like irreparable harm and catastrophic in describing the impact of the proposed legislation to cities like Mansfield, testifying before the House Ways and Means Committee. The mayor joined a chorus of voices opposing a Republican state lawmaker's bill that would reduce property taxes by eliminating the 1% of property tax value that schools and local governments can levy without voter approval, also known as inside millage. The bill would eliminate that inside millage, which legislative researchers have said would affect $3.5 billion in property taxes collected by local governments and schools. They said eliminating inside millage could return that money to homeowners who were seeing big spikes in their property tax bills, and lawmakers said local governments and schools can pass income or sales tax levies to make up for that lost revenue. Perry told state lawmakers the inside millage represents about $2.7 million annually in Mansfield's general fund budget. The mayor told lawmakers the impact to the city's general fund, which, by the way, pays about 50% of safety forces, could impact more than 24 police and fire positions in the city. The bill is still in committee. We'll keep an eye on it in the days and weeks ahead.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of talk around this bill and a lot of emotions, and I know it's what's the base, like the purpose of it would be to save homeowners money on like rising property tax prices,
right, because
costs.
There is a revolt going on in the state right now about property taxes. There's an issue that a citizens group is trying to get on the ballot that would largely do away with property taxes. And the state's kind of brought this on itself a little bit. I was looking, my property taxes in the last 6-7 years have gone up 48%. So I understand. And I think what's happening in Columbus right now is the lawmakers are trying to get ahead of this and find some way to try to appease people who are trying to just put this on the ballot and give Ohio voters a chance to give a big thumbs down to property taxes in general.
I haven't been a homeowner for very long, but as someone who is a homeowner and an adult and has bills and has a child, I definitely can, get excited about the fact of, I could have more money in my pocket. And again, correct me if I'm wrong though, but, hearing how damaging it could be to certain things that we do all enjoy, like safety forces and school districts or things, like, I don't know, I guess you have to weigh the pros with the cons in this situation. Does it help to have more money in my pocket if my school district is struggling? I don't know.
Yeah, it just seems like, why do we have to why do the people, it seems like it's going to hurt the people either way. Like, you're either paying more in property taxes, and some older folks don't want to subsidize schools and things like with that, but then it's like we need safety forces and strong schools and that public money. So I don't know. Maybe Lockheed Martin could donate to the cause since they're in line to make us a little bit of cash.
Well, all I know is when state lawmakers make the statement that local governments and schools can make up the revenue by passing income or sales tax levies, they have lost their damn minds.
Right.
Okay? You might do away with the inside millage, but to think that everybody's going to suddenly vote for an income or sales tax levy to make it up.
Right. Then what's
the point?
Go. Hey, folks who are sponsoring this legislation saying that, go bury your head in somebody else's sand.
Right.
Because mine's full. All right. That's enough for now. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Source Media CEO Jay Allred, assuming he doesn't fire us for the segment that we just did. Please stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. We're now joined by Source Media CEO Jay Allred. Guys, the boss is with us for the first time. Let's try not to suck at this, all right?
All right.
Watch what you say, Zach.
That's it. Well, Jay, congratulations.
I'd like to offer you some feedback.
Oh, thank you. Well, feedback is a gift and not nearly as big as a paycheck, but certainly thanks. Thanks for both.
Yeah.
Listen, Jay, congratulations on 12 years of Richland Source, and thanks for not shutting down the Newsman Weekly podcast yet.
That remains to be seen, but I'm sure it'll continue long into the future.
Well, we've made it a year.
So. We have.
You have, and congratulations on your year.
Thank
That's
you.
not easy to start something from scratch, as we're about to talk about.
Especially since 48 weeks of that, we're with Grant Ritchie. The fact that we're still here is quite frank. Sorry, Richie, you're gone, but I'm still picking on you.
You're probably not listening, so
no. He's listening. I guarantee he's watching. He is. All right, folks. Truth in Journalism Act of 1874. All right, there isn't really such a law, but there probably should be. Jay is not the first Allred for whom I've worked. His dad, Jess, was the publisher at the News Journal when I was hired as, believe it or not, a health reporter at the Mansfield newspaper in 1990. They went out and found the unhealthiest guy they could find and made him the health reporter. But I met Jay way back in those days, so the connection runs long and deep.
It really does. You and me and Larry were actually all at the News Journal at the same time. We were all very young. Like either in college or right out of college, and I was working in production, and you guys were both, for all intents and purposes, cub reporters in that newsroom, which was huge at that time.
Yeah, we had probably 50 plus FTEs.
What FTE?
Full-time equivalents.
Okay.
Because you count number of full-time, and then you count, we've got 7 part-time, and they add up to. If you're ever in a position where you have to cut a budget, you learn what an FTE is, Heiser.
And that was just
an acronym, Zach.
And that was
my job.
And I think that was just in the newsroom.
Yeah, it was just in the newsroom.
That's crazy. 50?
Yeah.
Wow.
At that time, we were covering Knox County, Ashland County, Morrow County. You could buy a Sunday News Journal in those days in Tiffin, Ohio. And how do I know that? Because I was driving back and forth for 6 months to Fostoria after I got the job because I hadn't sold my house. So I'd get to every Sunday when I'd wake up, I'd drive over to Tiffin to pick up I think they delivered like 25. But yeah, you could, that.
Oh, yeah, I remember the News Journal back in the 90s. It was thick.
That's back when they claimed that Sunday circulation was 55,000, but don't ask me how they counted all that.
I was in those press runs, in the press room and in the plate room, and we were printing 55,000 papers on Sundays.
So, all right, well, let's shorten the timeline. Let's go back 12 years. Let's go back to the, hey, guys, hey, gang, let's start a news website idea. How and where did all of this madness start, Jay?
So it didn't start with me, which is kind of a myth. And I'm glad that we're able to talk a little bit about it because our founder, Carl Ferniak, is very, very quiet in terms of, being a forward-facing person for the Source. And that's intentional and that's great. It speaks to his humility as a person and as a founder. But it really did start with him. Carl was in Leadership Unlimited with the Chamber Area Foundation. A lot of many of our listeners might know what that is. If you don't know, it is a leadership development program that is put on by the Richland Area Chamber and Economic Development. It's been put on for years and years and years. It's run by
Class of 97 right here.
Looking at him.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
did not know
Yes,
that. Okay,
yes.
so fellow alum.
The best class.
The best class.
That's crazy. They were saying that. They've been saying that for a while because my wife went through it, I don't know, a few years ago.
And she said it was the best class. Yeah,
I heard this year's was the best.
That's kind of a standing thing you have to say.
Yeah, for the record, I am not an alumni.
So I'll talk to you anyway.
That's fine. Thanks. I appreciate that.
You don't get the decoder ring, though.
But he was in Leadership Unlimited at that time, in 2012. And one of the things that they were looking at in that cohort was what is preventing Richland County from growing and thriving and developing. And if you go back to 2012 and you kind of think about the environment that we were in, this particular part of the country was still dealing with kind of the tail end of the 2008 financial crisis. Real estate prices were not what they are right now. The Phoenix Brewing Company didn't exist. Main Street was very different. It was just a very different place.
Relaxa didn't exist yet.
The GM plant had closed in very recent memory, right? And I don't even think it had been demolished yet, or it was in the process. So we were dealing with the blowback of the 2008 financial crisis. And so one of the things that they did in Leadership Unlimited was they kind of fanned out across the county and talked to as many stakeholders and leaders and regular people with this one central question: what is holding us back? And lots of different things emerged. But the thing that caught Carl's eye, for whatever reason, was that there was a theme that emerged that the stories that we tell ourselves about the place that we live are creating a barrier to bringing anyone else here. Now, the pointing from the people that they interviewed was kind of pointed at media in general, news media, particularly local media, and the feedback that they were getting was the stories aren't inaccurate. It's just that they're not the whole story. It's not covering the broad spectrum. We're paying a lot of attention to the things that are wrong, but we're not paying a lot of attention to the work that's being done to try to correct those things.
Kind of what I mean, the newspapers I grew up in, that's what we did. I mean, that's what legacy media newspapers
exactly.
We do stories. I mean, if it bleeds, it leads. We're doing stories about crime and corruption and
and for the record, so do we at the Source.
Right.
It's not that that kind of work is work that we won't do. But at that time, in that moment, there was this concern that Google is the outside world's window into Mansfield, and if you Google Mansfield, Ohio, what you find is not helpful to Mansfield. And the feedback that they were getting from stakeholders was, And it's not altogether reflective of what it actually is to be here. We know this place is challenged, but it's also got a lot of people working really hard to try to make it better, right? And so, for whatever reason, Carl caught on that, and he thought, well, I don't know a lot about journalism or media or any of those other things, but I'm pretty well versed in technology. I have a sense of this community. I want to try this. And it's that bold entrepreneurial, make a series of bad decisions that might work out kind of a vibe. Yeah. And that was the way that he approached it, with this sense of experimentation and trying to think through how might we look at this in a different way. They began spinning up some launch teams. They had some struggles in terms of defining what the product was going to be. On those launch teams, they really didn't have anybody that had any journalism experience at all. And so there were some fits and starts, and I got involved in May of 2013. That was when, I became involved and took the leap and the risk to leave a job that I had been with for a long time and to come and work here. And then we launched on June 18th of 2013. So I think I was with the company for about 3.5 weeks before we turned on the website, which was the central blocker. It was just like, we need somebody to help us figure out a plan to turn the damn thing on. And that was, and we've published every day ever since.
I'm going to knock on wood just in case it just jinxes. Now, there are a lot of people who would tell you that 2013 was not a great time to launch a news organization. Legacy media outlets around the country were disappearing. News deserts were already starting to crop up and still are. Many of our friends that are still publishing have seen dramatic staff cuts. What were you guys thinking you were going to do differently that was going to be different?
Well, so first of all, our first mistake was that we, in 2013, were absolutely convinced that the local news environment in America could not possibly get worse. And it has reliably only gotten worse since 2013. The statistics are really sobering. There are about a third less journalists working in the United States of America on the local level than there were in 2013. 2 to 3 newspapers, many of them weeklies that cover small towns like Belleville or Mount Vernon or many of the towns and villages that we know here very closely are closing, or they're being merged into something else that is not actually covering the town. So it really has only declined, especially from a legacy standpoint. To answer your question, what we thought we were going to try to do differently was we were going to try to cover Mansfield and Richland County in a way that more holistically reflected what it was like. The way that we tried to describe it to people, because we would have to oftentimes in the early years describe the source to people in like metaphors, because they didn't quite understand what we were. It's like, are we a blog? Are we a Facebook page? Who is this for? And frankly, we didn't know at that time because there were very few organizations to model ourselves after in terms of what we were trying to do.
Were there any?
Zach, there were a few. A couple that stand out are the Texas Tribune, that covered government and politics in the state of Texas. VT Digger, which was an organization in the state of Vermont that was headquartered in Vermont. But the number of truly local news sites that were built the way that the Source was built numbered in the dozens, not in the hundreds. And that was across the United States of America. There just weren't that many to model yourself after. So the goal was try to cover it more holistically. We would sometimes talk about ourselves like we were a community development organization that drove around in a van shaped like a newspaper. We talked a lot about news diet for people to try to help them understand what we were trying to do here. And the way that we would try to explain that to people would be things like, we looked at the crime rate in Richland County that measured by the FBI. The crime rate on any given year usually hovers between 6 and 7%. It means this is the number of people that are in the system in one way or another, for that year. And if you give 40% of your news coverage and you're to 6% of the population, you're by definition skewing the perception of the place. So we thought, look, we know that people need to know about this because it's public safety, but we're going to cover it. We're going to double the crime rate. We're going to try to not make it part of everything. We made some decisions about not doing very much on crime in courts. We made decisions early that we were going to be careful about sort of living on the worst day of anyone's life.
Right.
And trying to extract value from the worst day of any particular person's life. Doesn't mean we didn't cover it. It's just mean we changed our approach a little bit.
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah. Now, take us back to the actual launch date when you pushed the button and suddenly this website sprang to life. What was that day like? And at what point during the day did you ask yourself, the hell have we just done?
So, I remember the day pretty well. Set the scene. There was a group of about 6 or 8 of us at the time. We were in a back room at the former MT Business Technologies on office furniture that they didn't have any use for at the time. We had a couple of whiteboards. I mean, it was nice in the sense that it wasn't my garage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
So we were thankful for that, but it wasn't where we are now or, where our office ended up being. We turned the thing on and I'm pretty confident that my mom and dad read us that day. Carl's mom and dad probably tuned in. The number of visitors numbered in the low hundreds on the first day. We had done some smart things at the time. We had built a Facebook following of roughly 1,000 or 1,500 people leading up to the launch, which was very helpful for us to become known in those early years. Social media was a much less polluted environment at that time. Facebook really was connecting the world in ways that were novel and fun and people liked. We made a lot of use out of that to help reach an audience. I think my biggest fear was when I took the job, and I remember telling this to Carl and to the staff, was the thing that I worried about was, are we going to run out of stories? Are we going to get 6 weeks down the road and it's just I don't know, what's left? If we weren't going to cover traditional, if we were not going to use traditional legacy media methods, right, or story counts and that kind of thing, what were we going to find? And, it turned out that it's an unending amount of stories that can be told and people that are doing interesting things. And, and as you grow up and you get to work with people like Kurt Conrad, who came in and essentially saved our high school sports program the first year. We had no idea what we were going to do with that. We had designs on it, but no idea. And then when Larry joined us and when you joined us, Carl, as a stringer eventually and began to help us understand inside of the culture that we were trying to build at the Source 12 years ago, you helped bring gravitas and experience and news judgment to a place that really needed it. And it helped build the credibility of the newsroom in a way that I think we would have gotten to someplace similar to where we are today, but I don't know that we would have gotten there without folks like you and Larry and Kurt, who you were settling you were a settling force to this in the sense of it's all going to be okay, guys. We've done this. We've been where you want to go. And critically, as we started to get positive signals from the community that they were willing to change their news diet, that they liked they liked this mixture that we were giving them. Critically, you didn't try to turn us into something else. You bought in and were like, okay, great. This feels like a new start for us, and we like this. And how can we add to it? And that really helped us shape ourselves into what we ultimately became.
So 12 years in, look back and think in your mind, and I'm not asking for every one of them, but give me a few of the biggest milestones or the moments where you say this was a big moment, whether that was a news moment, whether it was a business moment, kind of as
Sure.
you look back, what were the big moments?
A big moment was hiring Kurt Conrad as a stringer. Kurt brought a sense of, it's hard to overstate how much we did not know what the hell we were doing. I mean, I had lots of experience in newspapers. I grew up around a newspaper man. I had worked in newspapers, so I had a sense, but I didn't have a sense of how to do newsroom things. I had a sense of how to make things and make them work. And Kurt just brought a level of, it's going to be okay to our newsroom. And that went well beyond sports. And then you joined shortly thereafter as a stringer, and that just really helped us. So that was a big moment. Journalistically, when we discovered solutions journalism and were able to put words and language and a methodology to what we knew in our head we wanted to do, which was to do when we did enterprise reporting or when we did ambitious reporting, we wanted to point people beyond just the problem. We wanted to point them toward, here are some things that we could do about it. Well, solutions journalism gave us that. So that was very big for us because it gave us an architecture that we could build on, like a plan, a skeleton. In 2015, when the New York Times picked up Dylan's story on flooding in Shelby, it was the first solutions journalism story we published. I remember he walked up we were in a 2-level space at the time. He walked up in the newsroom and he was holding his laptop the way that Catholic priest holds the Eucharist. It was as if it had been consecrated. and we were in this meeting, and he just sort of quietly, and if you know Dylan, he's not a loud person at all, and he quietly just said, we're on the New York Times. And it was just this moment of, I think we use this term here, as you guys know, eyes up, shoulders back, right? And it was this opportunity for us to see ourselves as to see a future for ourselves that was meaningful journalistically, that was meaningful to the communities that we were serving. So it kind of showed us, you can do good things. Mm-hmm. Like, you're in this little place, you're working in this small city, nobody knows who you are, you're doing things that people don't understand in a certain sense, but we found these, eventually people began to find us. Community engagement wise, I think in 2017, when we put on a community baby shower here as a result of a series that Brittany Schock did on infant mortality, and we came down at 8:00 in the morning to open the doors, and there was a line around the block. That told us things about this region needed. They were
solutions.
And they were finding value in the work of this young team, and in the work of this organization. They were finding like broad value in it. I mean, those are some of the milestones that I think about. I mean,
one of the things I remember, and I mean, I didn't come to work here full time until 2019, but I remember sitting back and watching, and one thing I found very refreshing is you guys didn't take yourself so damn seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked for newspapers that had, we weren't the Times, all the news that's fit to print. I mean, we had like Today's News Today, and we, print newspapers, we're like, we are the paper of record, and we have this thing, and here we are. And when I watch you guys, I saw ice baths, I saw bugs being eaten, I saw peeps being,
April Fool's Day for
right.
us was like a big thing for a while, and it was a sense of not taking yourself too seriously.
Now, was that just part of that was a thing, as the leader of the group, obviously you had to approve it, but also, were you happy to see that kind of stuff going on? And
oh, for sure. And I think that it's something that as we've gotten to be where we are today, I think one of the things that I know that everybody in this room thinks about, and I know I think about a lot, is like we need to keep that spirit, right? That the being different mattered in that context, and I think it still does. And I think you're seeing that if you like get a little bit meta about this, but like you zoom out a little bit, the ascendant news media platforms are doing things differently.
Right.
They're on TikTok. They are, they're individual people that are doing things really interesting and disruptive. They're doing things differently than we are. There's a lot to learn from there. But yeah, I loved that. I loved it when we did tattoo advertising and they worked for hours on that stupid Peeps video, but it was hilarious, and it was just like, and it was satirical, and it made fun of ourselves. We were willing to make fun of ourselves and to make fun of, in a very good-natured way, the people that were leading the community. No, there was never any malice to it, but it just allowed people to sort of, I think, see the source. And our goal was like, we're human beings too. We're not telling you what to believe or gracing you with our presence. Right. We're the same.
We're your neighbors.
Yeah, like we're in Kroger on Sunday in flip-flops trying to buy some eggs. We're not any different from anybody else. And I think that there was a sense of journalism has a tendency, and it still does, to kind of wall itself off from the people that it's covering, to maintain this delusion, or to me, it's an illusion of objectivity. We're just here to observe and report. Well, the reality is no one is objective. I think you try to maintain, I think the word they're looking for is fairness.
Right.
But I think they kind of like live in this world where it's objective. And I wanted people to know that the source was not objective. We were going to be fair, but the reality is that we were pro Ohio.
Pro Mansfield.
We're pro Mansfield.
Well, and when we moved into this space that we're currently in, which is formerly IdeaWorks co-working space, now kind of the Source headquarters, but it's still very collaborative, and that was kind of a big milestone. Yeah. I think you'd say, because it allowed us to do things like the community baby shower and really bring the community into our space. And I mean, we've done that from Richland Gives to this podcast studio here, allowing people to come in and record things, and startup weekend and all kinds of events and speaker events and music. And I think that space has been huge and it's really aligned with the mission from even before that, is to be part of the community and not speaking down to it.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with all of that. I think that the job of a news organization, as at least our job as we've understood it and as it's evolved over time, is we want people to believe that we want people to trust what we're telling them, even if they don't like what we're telling them. And that is the principal job of our newsroom, is to never let go of that metric, because it's never been worse, by the way, right, in terms of the way that Americans think about media. Right now, Gallup most recent poll is 31%, I think, of Americans trust mass media. We are that, if you have to figure us in. People trust local media more than they trust cable news or mass media or whatever. But when we last surveyed our readers in 2024, 95% of the people trusted what they read on the source. And I just think that that's the most important thing that we have, is to continue to try to be humble, try to be of the community, be honest with them, talk to them in a language that they can understand, work on their behalf. It's that kind of stuff. Just don't do what cable news does. There's just a fire hose of that kind of stuff. If you want it, you can find it anywhere. The point has always been to try to be different and refreshing, and of the place that you cover.
Now, I know awards aren't the goal, but certainly
they're definitely not.
Source Media has punched above its weight class many times in terms of national recognition. In addition to winning an award and the morale that builds, has that helped open doors for you when you're talking to local, state, and national folks, including potential funders, about the operation?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the fact that we work hard to not be awards focused, and super intensive about that. Of course, who doesn't like to be recognized by their peers? I mean, everyone does. So let's be realistic about that. But because our work has largely been different than what people recognize as the work of legacy media, it does attract attention sometimes. Our staff, our communities that we serve, I think they've grown used to this, right? This is what their media operation is. But if you live in Arlington, Virginia, or you're in a place that doesn't have a thing like the Source or Knox Pages or Richland Source, it feels kind of novel. If you're the Knight Foundation, or you're a institutional philanthropist, or you run a journalism think tank, when you look at organizations like ours, and there's a lot more of them now that are doing really interesting things, I think what they're looking for, Carl, when they see that kind of those awards or those pieces of recognition or the interesting work, I think what they're looking for is this a path forward? Because at the end of the day, the work that you're trying to do is create a future for journalism that is different than its past and also better than its present. And there's a lot of people all over the country that are doing a ton of interesting things, and I think what those folks are looking for are signals in the noise, right? Mm. Do I see something here that leads us toward a better future for journalism? And I know it sounds all highfalutin, but democracy.
Right. Now, in addition to news, you guys, or your team, has created your own marketing arm, Source Brand Solutions. Where did that idea grow from, and how important is it to the overall business today?
Well, it's huge. So another one of the many mistakes that we made when we started was we thought that the entire operation would become almost immediately profitable based on advertising. And, oh, wow, that didn't turn out. So again, you make these assumptions. You think that it's going to work a certain way, and then it doesn't work, right? But we began to, during the 2013, 2014, 2015, we were doing mostly advertising, but a lot of our customers were they needed help to try to figure out communication strategies on the internet, and what do I do with this Facebook thing, and how do I have an advertising campaign that I'm running with you, but I need a place on the internet for somebody to go to buy my gutters, or to, signal to me that I want to put a new roof on my house, right? And so what we found was we were getting these requests to help people do the layers below or above their advertising. And we saw an opening there. And we were doing that work. And so what we just tried to do was give it a name, Source Brand Solutions, create some space around what do we do and how do we serve small and medium-sized businesses, to really think of it as a unit that has people that are working on behalf of business clients and organizations to help them achieve their goals. And that's why we did what we did. But the goal was always, we learned really early, was we need to diversify this revenue stream.
Right.
You know, like it can't just be advertising. It can't just be marketing services. It can't just be memberships. It has to be all of the things, because all of those things help us do the ambitious journalism and the impactful journalism that we're able to do.
It's been fun. Well, fun is maybe the wrong word, but
it's been so much fun.
No, I'm about to take you to take you back to a specific moment in time. When the Source was founded, and I'm going to get to this in a minute. I remember back in the days of print newspapers, 80% of the revenue was advertising, 20% was circulation, and they were coexistent. I mean, you couldn't have one without the other.
Oh, sure.
But nobody would really necessarily complained or canceled because they got charged money to get the newspaper delivered. And advertisers like to know, you have customers who are paying, so I see value in you as well. So, yeah, but I mean, newspapers have never been profitable with just advertising. But when this place started, it was, we're not charging anything. Just come and read the news. And obviously, a couple of years ago, that changed. Talk a little bit about that process and how it's worked out.
Sure. So, again, the idea that you were going to make everything free to read was based on a business plan that didn't ultimately become the way the organization evolved, right?
Wait, you mean business plans change? Oh,
yeah,
my God.
Right.
Oh,
so,
my God. What
again,
a novel concept.
Among the things that I'm glad we made all the decisions that we made, but we just realized over time, we're like, okay, like we need to diversify this revenue stream. And so to get to your question, so it was helpful to be free and open to the public because one of the things that we needed to do was build an audience.
Right.
People, they didn't know whether anything we were doing was valuable at all. So imagine, you walk up to somebody and you just assume that they think that you're a good person. Well, maybe that's not exactly how that works, right? You kind of have to earn your way in. So we took that time to build that credibility in the community, to do the kinds of journalism that people looked at and said, oh, wow, this is more than just a bunch of press releases that have been regurgitated, and I'm just kind of looking at a not as good Facebook feed.
Right.
And I don't think we knew that we were going to get experienced journalists that were going to come work for us either, that were going to be able to understand, how do I cover city council? How do I create value? How do I do these kinds of things, right? I don't think we knew that. So as that began to happen, as you came on the team, as our younger reporters like Emily Deck and Brittany Schock and Katie Ellington Sorrow and Dylan Carr, as they evolved and began to grow with, the help of you and Kurt and Larry and others, Hayden Gray, not to mention, I mean, sort of somebody like you came to us, Hayden, as somebody that was really looking for a change, but needed to understand how to do the job. Yeah. Right. And now you're you're right there with us and have done fantastic work on behalf of Shelby. But as that began to happen, we launched a voluntary membership program, and that was largely successful. But I think we had reached a place where about a year and a half ago, I looked at where we were and I thought, we are basically at the ceiling of voluntary membership. The environment that we're in right now has changed in the sense that local news is weaker than it was at the time that we were founded. We're producing something of value to the community. It's largely recognized as valuable. Survey respondents say it's valuable. Advertisers say it's valuable. Members say it's valuable. It's okay to charge your most frequent users or ask your most frequent users to pay for something that they find valuable and use a lot. And that was what got me to that place where I brought it to the staff and said, I'd like to do some research to figure out if this is the right path forward for us. And, it wasn't without controversy internally. I mean, there's some people in this room that thought it was a terrible idea.
Well,
I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but
we had to push back a little bit.
But right, and the pushback was righteous.
What we needed to do even it's not like we just dropped a paywall and it's like, all right, pay. I mean, there's like nuance to it. You can get X amount of free articles. There's certain things we publish that are still always going to be free, and one of those is the childcare series we're doing right now. That's you can get on and read that without any requirement to sign in or pay. So there's always going to be kind of this balance. But
I think the goal was to just create something that invited people to develop a closer financial relationship with us, which is corporate code for buy a membership. I know. We want to do it, but we wanted to make it feel like the previous 10 years. Like, oh, this feels consistent with who this organization is. It feels consistent with what they're about. And then our readers could make choices about whether it was valuable enough for them to buy.
Yeah,
we're happy with how it's going so far.
I don't run into them, but I see, I'll see comments, and I really don't argue with them anymore because it's been long enough that I think I've said it 5,000 times. People say, well, I can't read this city council story. Why isn't, why do I have to pay for this? And I'm like, well, they pay me. I think I do a good job at this. By the way, if you want to sell me insurance, you're going to charge me money for that, aren't you? You're just not going to give it to me for free. So, almost said Continental Cablevision, almost showed my real age. I don't get internet for free. I don't get electric for free. I mean, you're paying for value. And obviously, I think you've seen, the number of memberships has grown since you actually instituted that the content gate.
Well, and I think that the reality is, though, that other services have arisen too, right? There's folks are going to move to where they're comfortable, and there will always be a segment of readers and community members that are going to say, I don't find that valuable enough. And that's okay.
Right.
I'm saying that on the record. It's okay. We would love to have you read us when you feel like it's in your interest to do so. We're going to remain here to serve you. We hope that at some point in time that you find it valuable enough to pay for. But I think we've approached it with the best combination of assertion of value and humility and understanding that we're part of a community and being as upfront and honest with the community as we can about why we're doing that, why we make the choices that we make. And if we can stay aligned with the values that we founded the company with, I'm willing to accept the consequences. The place where it would get weird is if we veer from those values in order to chase something, and I just don't want us to do that. I mean, our community has stuck with us for 12 years. I hope that they stick with us for 12 more, and the objective is always going to be the same, which is to tell the whole story about the communities that we serve and to provide something that they're not getting from somebody else. And if they like it, then we'll be able to keep providing it. If they don't, then we'll have to make other decisions. That's the point. I think the point you're trying to make, which is that it's a business, and
it's not a cheap one to run. It's not necessarily a profitable one. We have to have this is a stat. You talked about the News Journal having 50 employees in the 90s, like just in the newsroom. That wasn't a free paper that you received, was it? Did people pay for the papers?
That was back at a day pre-internet when newspapers were basically a license to print money. I mean, there was, if you ran a successful local newspaper in a town like Mansfield, and you were, at that time when I came, I think we were still owned by or just been sold by Harry Horvitz. And there was there's no competition at that time, and there was no internet. I mean, the internet changed everything in the news business. I mean, it's just the way it is, and
I think that in our industry, the nostalgia for those days is a bad thing to have.
Yes,
it's okay to remember them and to sort of like have them as a block upon which you build something new. But being nostalgic about that kind of stuff, it serves no one, because that environment is never coming back.
No.
I think we're probably better off in certain senses for it not coming back. It's dramatically lowered the barriers for innovation and for people to create news that is custom built for the community that they're serving, and they don't have to own a printing press.
Right.
You know, a laptop and an internet connection, you can, of course there's bad consequences to that, but the train has left the station. We're not going backwards, right? And so I think that it's important to have that as informing of the decisions that you make, but I'm always careful about being nostalgic about it. It's fun to talk about some days, and I'm glad that I lived in that era. I can remember what an analog process looks like. You know,
I remember unhooking my phone and hooking it up to my computer and dialing in and getting a 2,500 baud rate, or 2,600. I'm sorry, that was a big deal, but.
If Carl's wife was here right now, she would ask Carl to keep it in this century.
Keep it in this century.
Yeah. All right.
Either way.
By the way, can we congratulate Carl and Marcy on 40 years of wedded bliss? This is amazing. I mean, bliss for Carl. I don't know so much about Marcy,
but we need her to call in.
She's working, and I need her to continue to work. So don't bother her.
He's going to take her to a baseball game this weekend, I guess, for their 40th.
40 years is baseball.
Someone's
25 is diamond.
pastime.
40 is baseball. You know, Jay, I know
he's going to get an extra order of the nachos.
Yes,
because he's going full luxury at the game.
You know what? I am putting the 3-wood away, and I'm pulling out the driver. We're just letting go. Jay, I know something you're big on is partnerships. I know Richland Source has been a member of the Lion News, which I believe is local independent online news, which is a national organization, Solutions Journalism Network, the Google News Initiative, Report for America, and a whole lot more. Is building those partnerships, how important has that been to the success of the organization?
I think it's been a big deal for a couple different reasons. I think internally, it allows us to have access to really, really smart people who have become advocates for the work of the team here. They care about the work that Hayden and Dylan and Brittany and Katie and everybody in the newsroom, they care about the work that they're doing and they want to advance it, right? They see something there. I think that it is valuable for the community in the sense that why would a company like Google care about Mansfield and Richland County? It puts us on that map, right? It brings people into Mansfield and Richland County or Ashland or Knox County in a way that exposes us to them and them to us. It creates kind of a channel, right? And it helps us have access to resources that we wouldn't otherwise have access to. Sometimes that's expertise. In other cases, that's been grant funding to be able to do things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And I just have always believed that you go farther together than you go alone. We were alone for the first few years. We worked our tails off. We were able to get recognized. There were these key moments. And as a team, we leveraged those moments. And that was important because it's allowed us to be able to attract people into this newsroom that want to learn, they want to grow, they want to contribute, and the product is better because of it.
Now, obviously, I'm actually getting closer to wrapping this up, so bear with me for another
I had
minute.
no idea we were going to talk this long.
Oh,
This is great. I mean, I'm glad, but I'm like, I thought Carl would be just like, yeah, 12 years, get out.
Well, he only asked one question. You've been talking this whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
Shut up.
Yeah, see, we call that a career-limiting maneuver, Heiser. I'm just saying.
It's okay. You can just chunk like what's valuable though, right? Is you can just cut like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
at a
we
time.
don't edit. I mean, we're plausibly
Give the
live,
people what they
you
want.
know?
Yeah.
One of these days, we're going to do this show live. I'm not sure how we're going to do it.
No, we have the capability.
Yeah, one of these days we're
We
going to
do.
do it live, and
Good
we'll
Lord,
see,
I won't be on it.
we'll see how that plays out.
Please
But
stay far away that day. Yes.
obviously, since the days in the back room at MTB, the company has grown considerably. You've added Richland Source. You acquired Knox Pages along the way. I'm not going to ask you for the blueprint for what you've got planned in the next 18 months to 2 or 3 or 5 years, but what does the future hold for Source Media Properties? I mean, what give me some idea of some short-term, medium-term goals.
Well, I think short term, it's to build an organization that is able to sustain itself long term, 12 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, right? And that's about, so short term, medium term, it's about developing staff. It's about making sure that people are excited to work here and that they want to be here. We kind of have a phrase that we use when we think about product development, which is are we doing things that make people want to start at the source? We also want people to stay at the source if they're employees. Like, we want to create an environment that they look at this and they're like, I don't want to just date this organization. I kind of want to like move in and get married. I like this. This works for me. And the organization feels the same way about them. We've found that when we're really good at that, those people, and this goes back to local journalism or frankly, helping businesses, right? It's hard to develop relationships that are trusted relationships in 18 months and then you leave and then you cycle through to the next one, right? It's doable. We've seen it done, but I'd like to be able to do that in the short and medium term. In the long term, I think that this business is really set to expand if we can find the right opportunities and we can find the right communities that need what we're able to do, and that there's the right business climate to be able to expand. That's good for a couple of different reasons. It creates more room for our staff and our employees to advance and grow their careers. It creates a bigger footprint for advertisers who want to reach a wider audience. It leverages the talent that we have in Mansfield to be able to support growth. If we didn't have Zach on product and Brittany on audience and you as our deputy ME and Larry leading the newsroom and Audrey and Adam leading Source Brand Solutions and their staffs that are going to be in Mansfield and are going to work on behalf of businesses and readers, we would not be able to contemplate that. If we had to kind of just copy and paste that into every community that we went to, it would just be cost prohibitive. But as we've gotten this thing squared away, I think that we're in that place where I'm willing to think about that. I don't think I was really willing to think about that for the last few years because we were really concentrated on getting the organization honed and ready to go into its next decade.
All right. Well, we're going to have to stop there for today, Jay, because I've got stories to write, and I know you've got lots of things that publishers do. We're not exactly sure, but
you can't.
I told
you
dad. I told your dad that once, by the way, and he had a different look on his face. So thank you for that.
One thing you can't say is that I have a tea time because I do not play golf.
No.
So.
Yeah. Well, I've seen people play golf, and I don't recommend it. But you know what? Happy 12th birthday.
Happy 12th birthday to everybody.
To Richland Source, and thank you very much for coming in to spend time with us. And for those who were wondering, he had no idea what I was going to be asking today. I did
share
share
not.
my questions in
we don't
advance.
do that.
I
We
mean,
know
that's That's not good journalism. So even when the boss comes in, you got to light the grill just a little bit. But hey,
well, and happy birthday to the Newsman Weekly.
Yeah,
this has been
1 year old.
I mean, certainly for Zach, this has been a passion project for you since you started Source Daily back in several years ago, and really
it's been fun.
Have pushed us into podcasting in a way that has been. It's led to this kind of stuff, and I think that's really great because I don't think we were prepared to do it then, but we are now.
We've got this studio, so it's nice to put it to use.
And we got a bunch of people that want to sit around and talk.
Yeah.
We just put them in a room for a change. Hey, stay with us, folks. When we come back, we'll be joined by Dave Kracker to find out why he took such a deep dive into how local governments spent American Rescue Plan Act funds. Please, stay with us here. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly. Joining us now is Dave Kracker. He's the retired executive director of Richland County Children Services, who recently decided to spend a considerable amount of time digging into how the city of Mansfield, Richland County, and other local governments spent millions of dollars in American Rescue Plan Act funds. Good morning, Dave. Thanks for being with us today.
Good morning. Glad to be here and up and about.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, for those who might not be aware, the federal government in March of 2021 approved the American Rescue Plan Act. Then President Biden signed it into law. It handed money to local governments to help deal with financial hardships during the COVID-19 pandemic. More than $52 million was set aside for the city of Mansfield, Richland County, and smaller communities and townships around the county. For example, Richland County itself got more than $23 million in funds. City of Mansfield got more than $22 million. Plans for using those funds had to be solidified and made by the end of 2024. And all ARPA-related projects have to be complete by the end of 2026. Now, Dave, I've covered a lot of Richland County Commissioner meetings and Mansfield City Council meetings as these funds were spent. I've written a bazillion stories documenting their decisions, but that's what I get paid to do. Why did you decide to take a deep dive into reporting in this effort?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I actually, it was in the fall of last year that I began reading, perhaps it was really some of your articles that I realized, boy, this is really something. And I thought, well, where's all this money coming from and what are they going to do with it, kind of thing. And I think actually it was a bit regarding the angst of the elections that made me think, it'd be nice if somehow a pleasant, feel-good story could come out. And I thought, well, the more I came to realize what was involved and how this was helping our community, I thought, I'm going to look into this. So that's how it started. And then Dylan Carr's article from Richland Source really lit my fire.
Yeah, Dylan did a piece that looked at how Ashland County allocated its ARPA dollars, and it was very well received here. We talked about doing a similar story, but I think I convinced my boss, I've done so many individual stories that hopefully people around here know how the money was spent. But all right, talk us through your reporting efforts. How did you get started? How did it go? And how long did it take you?
I got soon into it and realized, holy mackerel, this is a deep issue and subject to cover. I wasn't going to try to do this so thoroughly that it'd be boring, but I began to sort out, excuse me, I think what struck me the most was the realization up front that both the city administration building repairs and updating and the county courthouse, both of those major projects, around $5.3 million for the county and close to $5 million for the city, was all ARPA money.
Right.
And you realize as a taxpayer, well, if this wasn't done now, because both those buildings are 50 plus years old and really in need of the work, somewhere down the road, we were all going to have to pay for this. And I thought, dang, that's quite a benefit. And that was just roughly 10 million of the 50. And I thought, well, what else is there? And the other thing was, there had been talk in the past about infrastructure projects being done by the government, but yet I don't remember reading much about them. Well, that was a biggie. And of course, when you get further in here, we'll talk about that. But it was basically those two things that caught me, got the fire going. And so I just took it from there and soon realized, holy mackerel. So actually, my report, as far as the in-depth portion of it, it regards the county commissioners' money spent and the city. When I started branching out, trying to do a village, I started with Lexington, trying to do a township, trying to do Madison, which is huge, as you know. It became tricky business because it's public information. You can ask for it, but you get a young clerk, for example, and they're not really, you can tell, sure, what I'm talking about, but they go dig and they send me a report, and it's just a portion of something that you really were looking for. So you try again, and the person says, I give you another little piece. And time-wise, I was getting so consumed with city and county that I really had to give up digging. Although I found that in both those two cases, they were clearly going to use all their money, Lexington Village and Madison Township.
Now, I've done kind of public accountability reporting for a long time, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you could delve a little deeper, what did you learn about asking for public records, and did you run into any problems along the way?
No, I ran into one situation where one person that I actually went in person to the office to ask for information, and the person was very helpful and gave it to me, and I interpreted in a report, a quick write-up, and sent it back to the department saying, do I have this right? And I got a different person, and the different person seemed to be irritated that I had this, not that I had the information, but I had misunderstood that a paving project wasn't for that little small mall out there. It was for the park, the village.
Right.
A lot. And well, I said, that's why I sent it to you, so you could correct it. Anyway, that was really the only time I encountered any difficulty.
When you asked for the public information or the public records, I'm always curious because this is something that kind of watchdogs have done over the years. Did anybody ask you, well, what's your name and what do you want this for?
I always gave him my name first. Mm-hmm. And not one person asked me, what do I want the information for? I told them what I was doing, that I was interested in looking into where did the money go.
Because that's something that we've, over the years, when there's been and it's usually one day a year where you go and you pick out 5 or 6 agencies and you walk in physically and you say, I want to see these specific public records. And it's wrong, but sometimes you get well, what's your name? Well, it doesn't matter what my name is. It's a public record. I'm part of the public. Well, but what do you want it for? Well, again, that's none of your business. It's a public record. And, well, you're going to have to sign for it. No, I'm not. Again, it's a public record. And, I mean, we've had great success, at least the times I've been around Richland County, but I can't always say that's been the case in other counties that I've worked in over the years. You sometimes get stonewalled. A public records request, I believe the Supreme Court has held that local governments or any government can have what they call a reasonable period of time to give you those records. And I think the Supreme Court in Ohio anyway has found that to be 10 business days. So when you ask for your information, how quickly do you think, and for the most part, let's talk about the city of Mansfield and Richland County specifically, since those are the ones you did your deepest dives with. How quickly did they get the information that you requested?
Pat Dropsy gave me the information I asked for the same day, every time.
That doesn't shock me that Pat would do that.
And at City, I'm sorry, I can't remember the fellow I dealt with. He sent me a report within a day or two, a line item report that really helped to get it going.
Is there a charge? Is there a charge for public records now?
No. Well, there wasn't.
It depends on the record and how many pages it is and what the local government is.
Okay.
They're allowed to assess a fee, a reasonable fee based upon the number of pages. So if what you're asking for is 500 pages,
Sure.
You may get charged so much per sheet. I know in the city of Mansfield, if you go up to get a copy of an accident report, I don't know what they charge, but there is a slight fee charged with pulling. And they're allowed to do that as long as it's a reasonable fee. All right, Dave, what were your biggest takeaways from your research? Did anything surprise you about how local governments decided to spend their ARPA money?
Well, I was surprised that as I went along, I was having a hard time connecting the expense to COVID. And then I finally came across the infamous final rule.
Yeah, the final updated final rule.
Which essentially meant the government, groups that were asking for the money would say, could you clarify this or that? And I got the feeling that a lot of the really major needs from COVID were getting covered quickly. And it was like, we still have this money. What can we do? And that's not unusual, I'm told, with federal monies, that it kind of sifts down to staging what you can do. And that final rule, which is hard to understand, but it really opened the door to the smaller, the villages and the townships especially, to get money that under the first setup of requirements and eligibility issues, they, I think, really weren't entitled to much, if anything. So that really threw that door open for them.
Yeah, I remember the Treasury Department wrote the rules after it was passed, and I remember covering county commissioners at the time, and their lament was, yeah, we've got all this money, but what can we spend it on? And it was at that time called the final rule, but then they issued the final rule, and suddenly lots more projects became...
Yeah, basically anything that the county ever did or spent money on became eligible under whatever the word was. It was that's where, again, the subject got a little deep for me.
Now, I know one of the things we talked about, improvements to the county courthouse building and also the city administration building, but I also know that there's been money spent on the Westinghouse site, numerous water sewer projects. I know one the county is doing is a sanitary sewer down by 97. I think it's $4.7 million, which was something that was needed. And the hope is that by the time that was done, the planned YMCA complex would be built. But talk about what else you came across in terms of big infrastructure projects.
Okay, and by the way, that project it is now at $5.2 million.
Oh, the sanitary sewer?
Yeah.
Okay.
There were in the county. Let's see here. It's easier to go off these notes here.
I know, for example, the county did spend money with the sheriff's office to buy police cruisers and pay premium pay and things like that.
Well, what I did was I ended up dividing the categories into public safety, strong, healthy communities, infrastructure, and administration. And it's kind of hard to explain, but the way the projects read, the way they were tabled under the reports that came in, it was hard to figure. You just had to go on the basis of that's clearly an infrastructure project. In the county, the courthouse renovation, of course, was the biggie. But the clean water is the second one, and that total for that, including the Belleville 97 project, really came to about $6.4 million. And $1 million in roads repair, And then the surprise one, in a way, for me was broadband is $2 million, and it still has not developed into a plan because of whatever, getting the parties that must be involved together to make it happen. But
that's the one I've asked commissioners about the most, because this money does have to be, these projects, have to be completed by 2026. And I know that's something that commissioners have told me that they're confident the work will be done by then. But I'm not sure what happens. I'm sure there's something in the contract that says if it's not going to get done, we can pull that money back. But I'm not sure. And that was something I'd have to ask Andrew Keller about, the county administrator.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's issues and concerns with the broadband project. And the idea behind that project is there's a lot of homes and businesses in northern Richland County that don't have access to broadband internet. And this was to make that happen. And obviously that is a big deal. I was also, I saw this when it was going on, but in your report, I saw you noted it. The county participated with the city of Mansfield in a lot of things, like $500,000 for Westinghouse, $500,000 for the Sterkel Park, community park for all.
Bike trail.
The bike trail, the West End project, Friendly House, an affordable housing study that was done. And I know they also gave Shelby $500,000 for the Black Fork Commons Plaza. So when you looked at this, what struck you about government cooperating? Perhaps, did ARPA give local governments a chance to cooperate on things that maybe they don't always have a chance to because of their own limited budgets?
Well, I think that certainly seemed to me like it opened the door. And Tony Vero, county commissioner, did refer to a group, a council of some sort that formed, that coupled the city and county's efforts, and perhaps the villages and so on. I don't know about that. But it only made sense. And, of course, that was in Tim
Thaker, yep.
Day. And, yeah, you covered really the city's stuff. It's major dollars. The city's infrastructure was almost $10 million.
And I know one of the things when this money was being spent, I hear it, and it's primarily a Facebook thing, but people saying, they're going to waste this money, they're going to waste that money. And yet, when we're talking here today, as a citizen who did some reporting on this yourself, what I'm hearing is you saw a lot of money being spent to improve infrastructure, buildings, storm sewers, water lines that otherwise wouldn't get done. Did you come across anything as someone who's worked in government that said, this is a questionable expense? I don't know if I agree with this.
Well, I think the one that made me think, wait a minute, it was the repaving of Marion Avenue, that stretch, or Millsboro, from Trimble out to Home, I think it was. That's the one where I said earlier, wait, how does this connect with COVID? And even a friend of mine, when I was telling him about this, he said the same thing, and arms flying up in the air, getting to be the angry taxpayer kind of reaction. But that was, again, when I got to the final rule, I began to realize, well, I don't fully understand it, but the money is there. It's going to get used for very good things that I could see. And I thought, clearly there are projects that got done that would never have been done. Absolutely never. Mayor Perry acknowledged that, and so did Tony. And so I think it's, in fact, I reference in my report in a section called the overview, the summary of the benefits. It's the avoidance of large future capital costs, whatever variety of the four that I mentioned, the safety issues, public safety, the infrastructure, the healthy communities, that sort of thing. Completion of the many infrastructure projects which we've talked about. Public safety has been enhanced as both county and city. They have done a lot of work together to make for quicker, faster connection with the problems. I don't understand all these things, but even though I've read a lot of the stuff, it's just hard to get any detailed understanding. But you can tell it amounts to the much faster, quicker cooperation between the police departments when there's problems. As I put here, it's savings to county and city budgets. Many of these projects would have had to come out of annual budgets, the government entities, since March of 21. Instead, more current funds are available for future costs. And you probably have heard Tony Vero say more than once, $8-point-something million surplus.
Right.
And he smiles big with that one, of course. So that's just the essence of how it all summed up in my mind.
So when you look at it as a citizen, private citizen at this point, but are you satisfied with how, and we'll just limit it to Richland County Board of Commissioners in the city of Mansfield, are you satisfied with how they spend ARPA money?
For the most part, I am. The one thing that I noticed, and I guess it's my social work background, the bill was intended it did refer to a particular population of disadvantaged persons.
Right.
And in some, you could say in general ways, the infrastructure really helps everybody. Therefore, people of all economic status are included. The park systems certainly cover that. I think the North End project was intended to do that, and that was unfortunate that was unable to proceed.
Yeah, that was the NECIC community center that they wanted to build, and I think the city set aside $1.5 million, but when it became apparent that project was not going to be complete by the end of 2026, they pulled that money back, and that's when they spent money, I believe, for some of the parks improvements in the North End of Johns Park and King Park.
Right, and then at the final bell, the Harmony House, with the new name, whatever it is now, that
Right.
money really was the final, I think, capper.
To move that.
So, I'm hesitant to be critical about that thing of the disadvantaged people because I don't understand enough to really justify being critical. It's just that when I look at the projects, it's the Friendly House and Catholic Charities are the two that are clearly fit that model or that requirement, and but those were limited amounts of money.
Right. All right, so Dave, now that you've done this, what's your next reporting project? And do I need to be worried you're coming for my job, Dave?
Just, you can sleep like a baby every night. I don't know how you do all that you do. Following you in the Iditarod was tiring just to read.
Well, you know what? I often get that response from people when they read anything I write. Hunnell, it's tiring to read what you write.
My good buddy and former boss Jerry Fuddy loved to say, if something was not so good, he'd say, "That's a sure cure for insomnia."
Well, I worked with Jerry's son, John, at the News Journal many years ago, and I knew Jerry, and he was a great guy, even though he was a Indians now Guardians fan. I'm a Cardinal fan, so it's
Oh, you're going to be happy.
Well,
maybe.
Well,
this weekend.
The Cardinals play at the Guardians this weekend. I'm thinking that might. My wife and I celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary yesterday, and we were busy, but now we might maybe go to Cleveland, and I might take her to a baseball game for her. I'm pretty sure the 40th anniversary is baseball. I think you get like a diamond at 25, and you get baseball at 40.
I think you're on thin ice.
as I have been for 40 years.
Why change now?
Exactly.
No, so government reporting isn't your next job.
No, but I'm really glad I did this. It just felt. I'm prone to, if I take on a project, to stay with it. It's kind of got me through other things in life. You can't give up easily. But I really felt good about trying to just provide some information. And then, just the other general thing is, you pour $52 million into the community. Yeah, hey, that's going to help with the economy.
Right.
And the other thing is that I didn't dare go near. I mean, I did touch on it. The schools received about $56 million.
Yeah, that's a relatively still untold story. Is how cities is how school districts received and spent ARPA money. Because if you think county and government funding is something interesting to try to dig into, go look at school funding at some point, and you will run away screaming into the night trying to figure out where all this money comes and goes.
I'm glad I didn't push it.
Dave,
in fact, I couldn't.
No, go ahead.
Well, this included primary school, secondary, and colleges, and North Central gave me what they had, but I really could not get information from Ohio State. In terms of what you're talking about, where it can be difficult, it was strange. But the Ashland University, in what's his name study,
right.
I think they got almost a third.
And that took Dylan concerted effort to get that information, because Ashland University obviously is a private university, and when you start giving public money to private entities, getting accountability for that funding becomes even more of a challenge sometimes.
Tricky,
to get.
yeah.
But all right, anything else you want to talk about in terms of your ARPA work, Dave, that I haven't asked you about?
I'd like to comment that for persons who have seen the report or would like the report, because I am willing, by the way, to send this out to people. I've had about 10 folks call in from the News Journal article that was done. This report contains a list of the amounts that these villages also and townships could get. In other words, it was not what they got, it's what they had the prospect of getting. And for one thing, I had no idea there were 18 townships in Richland County.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that Madison, in terms of the apparent population, because they received 1,136,143. And in terms of the money given, which is, I think, based on population, they would be the second largest city in Richland County.
Right. I tell people all the time, because Madison Township is the second biggest governmental entity in terms of population. And when people talk to me about why do you cover Madison Township but maybe not Sharon Township? Well, you have a board of trustees that is basically running the second biggest, you can't call it a city because it's a township, but responsible for the second biggest governmental entity in Richland County.
Yeah. My point I was getting at is that those figures which are listed, if people are interested, it shows all 18 of them, and their total as a group was $5.2 million. So, whereas the village's total was $1.1 million.
Right.
So, but those figures, I just wanted to. I put a footnote in here, but you know how it is with the little asterisk that people are supposed to go down and look. It points that out, that this is not necessarily the money they have projects for, but it's what they're eligible for.
Right.
But it's still, I think Dylan found it in the work at Ashland county, the townships were spending every nickel. And
Yeah,
I can't believe our county townships wouldn't have done the same.
Yeah, I've not run across in my years of covering government where they don't spend the money they get.
Yeah.
It's like the old days of the federal government, and it still is. You better spend it, because if you don't, you're not going to get as much next year. So you got to spend it and show that you spent it all. But
now, Dave, you mentioned people can email you
Yes.
to receive a copy of this. What's
Yes.
your? Do you want to? And we can put this link. We can put a note in the show notes for this. But
Sure.
what's your email that people can reach you at?
It's the initials of my full name, Henry David Peter Kracker. So
Okay.
HDPK38@gmail.com.
hdpk38@gmail. All right.
Yep.
yeah, we'll put that in. But all right, folks, we're going to have to wrap up today's show on that note. Many thanks to Dave Kracker for joining us today and for the great work that he did. How many hours did it take to do this?
I don't know. If it turned out to be 100, I wouldn't be surprised,
Yeah,
because I would get off onto rabbit holes, and just out of curiosity, even though I realize that I'm not going to be able to do anything with this. But again, it was sort of like doing a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I felt good that I was getting something done, and I struggled with how to put it together in a way. My thought was, what will the public, what topic, subject? And that's where I came up with the safety, infrastructure, strong and healthy family, communities, and administration. And that was tricky business, because the reports don't help you. It'll say, so many pipes or whatever, and you figure, well, that's obviously infrastructure.
Right.
So you really had to, and even putting the courthouse stuff together was tricky business.
Yeah, because they've done various things, from the from the courtroom renovations to
right down to furniture,
and bathrooms. I mean, a lot of bathroom work going on at the courthouse.
elevators.
Yeah, don't even get me started about elevators, because that's a whole nother kettle of fish. And Dave, I want to congratulate you, because I see people every day who shake their fist at local government and scream that you're wasting money and you're not doing things the right way, but you actually took time to research it yourself and kind of find out for yourself how this money was spent. So thank you for doing that.
I'm glad I could do it, and pleased it's done.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, Dave, now I have your email. If you ever get the itch again, you're just an email away.
Yep.
Yes.
We'll
That's right.
start sending you assignments for deep dives into government records. But
Yeah.
hey, for now, thanks again to all of you for listening to the Newsman Weekly. I'll be back in a second to put a bow on this week's episode, but until then, remember what Mark Twain said: if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.